The middle of nowhere. I was traveling by myself to visit family in California. It was the middle of the summer and it was hot. I lived in Colorado and was a long way from California. I felt like Kit Carson as I looked at the map. I would have to stay the night somewhere before the Rocky Mountains. I picked a spot in northern Nevada and made sure I had packed everything. I put extra food and water down for my cat and took one last look at him. Don't give me that look. I'll be back. I'll even leave the TV on your favorite channel. I started up the car and adjusted my mirrors. It was 5:30 a.m. and I loved it. I'm a morning person. I looked at the map and set my GPS. Turn left, the GPS said. I looked to the left at a dumpster with a guy looking through it. Geez, I hope this thing is accurate, I thought to myself. I hopped on the interstate and turned on the radio. Before I knew it, I was almost to the town where I would be staying the night. This doesn't look like an incorporated area, I said to myself. What I thought was a town was just a dark road with an old gas station and an old motel about 200 feet off the road. I didn't see any cars, nor did I see a light anywhere. I'll just keep going and find a more lively area. I pulled over and looked around a bit. It was strangely quiet. It seemed desolate. I looked at the old building behind the gas station. The gas station was obviously abandoned. I looked at my map. There's nowhere else to stay the night until I crossed the Rockies. It was 10 p.m. and I was starting to nod off. There's no way I could keep going. Suddenly, I saw movement in the darkness near the old motel. Maybe it's the motel owner. I couldn't see who it was, and the dark figure disappeared behind the building. I got out of my car and called out to them. Hey, can I get a room? Where's the office? I got no reply. I thought to myself where the object could have gone. I walked behind the building in its footprints and saw a door that looked like a cellar. For a moment I thought I heard moaning. It's probably just the wind. I walked back around the motel and up to the front door. Well, it is a motel, I'll just go in. So I walked in and it was completely dark. As I got further inside, I could hear what sounded like a radio. The noise was coming from behind a door. At this point, I decided to get back in my car and drive over the mountains. I had a bad feeling about this place. I heard the slight moan again, and immediately my heart began to race. It was as if my brain was telling my body to get out of there. Something wasn't right. As I turned to go back out the front door, I saw out of a window the dark figure standing there staring at me. I looked at their face, but I couldn't tell if they had a mask on or not. The person opened the door and slowly shut the door behind them. They were breathing heavy and a horrible odor hit my nostrils. I looked at the person's face, but it was deformed horribly. When it breathed in and out, it made a wheezing noise. It only had a small hole in its face where the nose was supposed to be. What looked like a mass of scar tissue started moving, and it was making a noise as if it was trying to talk. The person kept pointing to me like it was trying to get me to understand something. Yes, I was looking for a motel that I saw on a map. The person stopped suddenly and looked towards the part of the building where the empty rooms were. Its scar-tissued mouth started flopping around again, and it was making a noise and pointing at me again. What did they want me to do? I'm sorry, I can't understand you, I said. I'm just going to go now. The person opened the door and began walking to one of the doors of the empty room. I curiously looked on as I saw a bed in the room. The information on the map said $39.99 per night, so I took $40 out of my wallet and held it out in front of me. The horrible-looking person looked at me and then walked behind the motel again, disappearing. I walked up to the room and looked in. It was clear that nobody had been here for a long time, but there was a bed. I leaned over and looked around the building. Nobody. I decided I would sleep there for a few hours and then leave after I'd had enough rest to stay awake for the drive over the mountains. I looked up at the Rockies and took a warm blast of air in my nose and exhaled. I took a peek over my shoulder again at the end of the building and grabbed my bag and locked the door behind me. I tore open a bag of jerky and a loaf of bread. I sat there obviously eating until a feeling of terror crept over me. Where am I? Who is he? Is he some guy affected by radiation from the nuclear testing that was done in this area in the 1960s? What about the cellar and the moaning? Is there somebody down there who needs help? Is that where the creature keeps going? I had so many questions in my head. I looked around the room and noticed a vent on the bottom of a wall. I wondered what it was for since I didn't see any air conditioning or heaters anywhere outside. I decided maybe I was just tired and overreacting, and I laid my head on the bed with no pillow. I stared at the vent before eventually I felt myself getting as light as a feather and slipping off to sleep. I was awakened sometime later by a slight sound. It was continuous. I listened to it closely, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from. I looked around until I realized where the noise was coming from. With my head still laid down on the bed, I looked straight ahead. The noise was coming from the vent. I laid there staring at the vent until I realized what it was. It sounded exactly like the wheezing noise that was made when whatever that creature was began breathing through the hole in its face. My heart began to sink and my body turned cold. I got the feeling like I was being watched. I stayed motionless and tried not to make a noise. I stared at the vent as the breathing continued. It was almost as if the horrible-looking creature was on the other side of that vent and had been watching me sleep. "Hello?" I said softly. Suddenly the breathing stopped. I felt as if I was having an out-of-body experience. I couldn't believe this was happening. I laid there staring at the vent. Was the person still there? I slowly sat up in bed and pulled the covers off me. I walked up to the vent and knelt down. "Hello?" I whispered. Nothing happened. I looked around out the window and saw nothing in the dark. I decided to text my parents. I picked up my phone and it was 2:50 a.m. I wanted to tell my parents about what was going on and tell them I would be getting on the road soon. "Hey, Dad and Mom. I'm staying the night at a motel just on the other side of the Rockies in northern Nevada. The map showed a motel that was supposed to be in business, but when I got here, it was the total opposite. Everything is abandoned. Although I did manage to find a room, that's not all. There's something creepy about this place. There's nobody else here but a guy, and I heard what sounded like moaning coming by from a cellar. I was woken up just now by the sound of breathing coming from a vent. It sounds like wheezing. Anyway, I'm leaving ASAP." I sent the text knowing they were sleeping. It made me feel better. Suddenly my phone beeps. One new message. That was fast. "Son, your mother and I just saw a report on the news of a missing person reported in that area. The report stated the area around an abandoned motel has been linked to multiple disappearances." Just then, I heard a noise come from inside the wall. I started feeling like I was hyperventilating. I felt trapped. I realized what the radio was for, and the noises in the cellar, and the vent. I tried to control my breathing as my heart pounded. I didn't know where the creature was at, but I knew I had to run. I grabbed my keys and looked out the window. It let out a horrible scream as I opened the door and ran to my car. I left everything behind, even my cell phone. I got in my car and stuck the keys in and cranked the engine. I managed to drive away just as the creature was approaching me. I drove into the dark and into the mountains. I was wide awake from fear as I was trying not to hyperventilate again. By the time I realized I'd left my phone, I decided I didn't need it. My mind was racing as I tried to make sense of everything. What or who is that mysterious figure? What happened to all of the people who had stopped there to sleep for the night? I was certain of one thing. I was glad to have escaped. I don't know what would have happened if I had decided to stay there and went to sleep again. As I pulled into my parents' driveway and put the car in park, I felt guilty as I thought about the noises coming from the cellar. I had made it. Others had not. I decided not to stop for the night on a vast stretch of a lonely highway anymore, to sleep at a motel that looks abandoned and sits in the middle of nowhere.